Our understanding of religion and mythology is very weak. You cannot live without mythology, but you can live without religion. Hi, this is Devdutt Patnaik and you're watching me on Talkative Tidbits. Well, characters like God, prophet, avatar, heaven, hell don't exist in history. History is about the past, mythology is timeless, history is objective, mythology is subjective. History is about events, while mythology is about worldviews. So very different, they're completely different genres. Well, religion is a kind of mythology. Mythology is of three types: polytheism, monotheism, and atheism. And monotheistic mythology is called religion. That's all. So mythology, see, basically the definition of mythology is this: subjective truth of a people communicated through stories, symbols, and rituals. Some people have many gods, so that's called polytheistic mythology, like Greek mythology, Roman mythology, and some parts of Indian mythology. Some people have one god only, so that is Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and again some part of Hinduism, because Hinduism has both polytheism and monotheism. And then there is atheism, no god at all required. So Buddhism, Jainism, secularism, humanism, communism, capitalism, all of these are atheistic mythologies, including some part of Hinduism, because Hinduism has parts of polytheism, Hinduism, and atheism. So because it's a collection of many ideas. So mythology, is not just stories. It is also symbols and rituals. In a book, you can communicate both the stories as well as symbols. You can't communicate rituals. You can only describe the rituals. So you need illustrations to show, for example, the various mudras, the various gestures, the various signs which are used, like swastik. Swastik has to be seen. Om has to be, visual has to be seen. The mandalas, the yantras, you have to see it. The murtis of how Krishna stands, the position of the four hands, the four heads of Brahma. All these things you have to see it. Only then it makes sense to you. All mythologists will talk about the Epic of Gilgamesh, because it's one of the oldest well-articulated stories found almost 4,000 years ago. It is one of the first hero myths. It is the first time you hear of stories from the Sumerian culture. So it's called the Epic of Gilgamesh. I think that's a standard favorite across the world. Well, people like to see stories where they feel some of the characters are familiar to them, but the stories are unfamiliar to them. So when you tell a story of Krishna, but tell an unknown story of Krishna, they find it exciting. You tell a story of Ram, Ram is familiar, or Ramayana is familiar, but you tell something unknown about Ravan, they get excited. And I think that is why these mythological serials are more popular than stories where you don't know a single character, you don't know who they are, where they are, and you have to make a lot of effort to connect with those characters, as compared to mythological characters you have grown up with. Well, that's not true. Our understanding of religion and mythology is very weak. Mythology, there is secular mythology, Indian nation state. You cannot live without mythology, but you can live without religion. Religion is only found in some parts of the world, but mythology is found in all human cultures. Modern, traditional, tribal, everywhere in the world. The moment you become human, mythology comes into your life, because mythology tells you how to look at the world. One of the ways in which you look at the world is a religious way of looking at the world, where there is an institution which says that it has access to supernatural powers and controls how people are supposed to live their lives. That is broadly where religion is used. But most people, not most people, all human beings need mythology to make sense of the world. So that will always be there. So it's nothing unique to India. It's only Indians who think that we're mythological. Americans are as mythological, Japanese are mythological, Africans are mythological, everybody is mythological, because you can't look at the world. How do you make sense of right and wrong, good and bad, heaven and hell, gods and demons? All these concepts come from mythology. They don't come from anywhere else. Well, you can rewrite the stories, but how far will you go when it stops looking like the Ramayana? For example, you can't have a story where Ravan kidnaps Ram. then it doesn't stop being Ramayana. You can say I'm reimagining it, but nobody connected with Ramayana. What you do is you change the complexities of the relationships where the arguments and the presentations are fine-tuned, and there are subtle shifts in the story. That is called rewriting of the Ramayana. Otherwise, you can completely distort and destroy the story by just using Ravan character and or using Sita character in a completely way that is completely unfamiliar, or costumes that make no sense to people. So it is a whole spectrum of things where there is an original retelling, there is a retelling where you're as true to the original works, then there are versions where you sort of shift the emotions and the character development very slightly, and then there are stories where you completely tear the story apart, and what is called a postmodern retelling, where everything becomes so strange that Ram doesn't feel like Ram, Ravan doesn't feel like Ravan, except to the writer. Well, all writers take creative freedoms. The question is, are you interested in your point of view or in the tradition's point of view? That's the whole question. And will your audience connect with your point of view? In some cases it works, some cases it doesn't work. Most fantasy writers today, and most of the mythological fictions are fiction based on mythology, where writers behave like lawyers and they are justifying the action of one god or another god. So they write books like judges and lawyers. They're not telling the story as storytellers without judging their characters. Most of our characters today, so there's a feminist perspective which wants to make fun of all the men. There is a left-wing perspective which looks at everything in terms of victimhood and villainy. There's a right-wing perspective which refuses to see any fault in the gods and all faults with demons. So, there are different political perspectives coming, and they're behaving more like lawyers and judges and not as storytellers. Mythologists don't try to take sides. They try to understand what tradition has been trying to communicate. So you try to understand, why did Valmiki write Ramayana in a particular way? Why did Tulsidas try to write Ramayana in a particular way? Why are Tamil versions different from Gujarati versions, are different from Assamese versions? So you try to make sense of that period. Why did this particular version of the story exist in that time? Why are Radha temples, for example, not found in South India? Why are only in North India you have the story of Radha being elaborated, but only after the 12th century? What happened in the 12th century that made Radha important? So you have to study it through a historical lens, through a geographical lens, through a community lens. So that is more academic. You're not trying to write fiction and retell stories. So mythological fiction is very different from mythological studies. It depends on whether, when you're using the word mythological, you're writing from an academic point of view, or you're writing or talking about mythological fiction. Mythological fiction is fiction, and it is the success of writing any, for many people, Bahubali is fiction. It has nothing to do with mythology. But most people confuse costume drama, they consider mythology. And like all stories, of course, with whatever you write, ultimately a masterpiece has to connect with your heart and soul, and sort of, if it doesn't connect with the heart and soul, and if it doesn't uplift me emotionally, if it doesn't connect with me at a very personal level, it will never succeed. So to be successful, connect with people's emotions, make them deal with their emotions like hatred, anger, jealousy, and when they read it, they should feel they're transported into a new, different world, and when they come back, they are better human beings, or at least equipped to handle life better. That always makes a great story.